when a 6-year-old boy handed me a drawing at the park and whispered, "My friend told me to give you this. He says you'll die soon." I thought it was a child's dark joke, but when I looked at the drawing, I saw details about my life that no stranger could possibly know. 3 days later, I discovered the child's imaginary friend was real, and he'd been trying to warn me about something that would happen exactly 1 week from that moment. My name is Tessa Morgan. I'm 33 years old, and I'm a hospice nurse in Austin, Texas. I spend my days helping people through the final stages of life, so death isn't a stranger to me. But nothing in my professional experience prepared me for what happened that October afternoon when a child I'd never met gave me a drawing that contained information only someone watching me very closely could know. The warning came from an unexpected source, and ignoring it would have cost me my life. Before we get into this story, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. I love connecting with you all. I became a hospice nurse because of my grandmother. When I was 22, I watched her die from cancer, and the experience changed my life completely. The hospice workers who cared for her in those final weeks were incredible. They managed her pain, talked to our family about what to expect, and helped her pass away peacefully at home surrounded by people who loved her. I remember thinking that helping people die with dignity was one of the most important jobs anyone could do. So I went to nursing school, specialized in hospice care, and I've been doing this work for almost 10 years now. I work for a home hospice agency here in Austin. Instead of working in a hospital or facility, I visit patients in their own homes. I help manage their pain, coordinate with doctors and families, and provide comfort during the last days or weeks of life. It's emotionally heavy work. You get close to people knowing they're going to die, and then you have to do it all over again with the next patient. But it's also deeply meaningful. I've helped hundreds of people have peaceful endings, and their families always tell me how grateful they are for that gift. My personal life is pretty simple. I live alone in a small house in South Austin that I bought 2 years ago. I was so proud the day I closed on that house. Homeownership in Austin is expensive, and doing it on a nurse's salary felt like a real achievement. It's nothing fancy, just a 2-bedroom house with a small yard, but it's mine. My younger brother Dylan lives in Houston with his wife and their new baby daughter. We're really close despite the distance. We talk on the phone several times a week, and I drive to Houston every couple months to visit them. Our parents retired to a small town in Hill Country, about an hour from here, and I usually go see them for Sunday dinners. I've been single for about a year now. I dated someone for a while, but it wasn't going anywhere, so we ended it. I'm honestly fine being on my own right now. My work is fulfilling, I have good friends, and I'm not in any rush to jump into another relationship. I do yoga twice a week to help manage the stress of my job. On Saturday mornings, I volunteer at an animal shelter because spending time with dogs and cats is the best therapy I know. Sundays are for family. It's a good life, a balanced life. I feel grateful for what I have. The day that changed everything was a Saturday in mid-October. I'd finished my morning shift at the animal shelter around noon and decided to spend the afternoon at Zilker Park. If you're not from Austin, Zilker is this huge park right in the middle of the city. It's beautiful, especially in October when the Texas heat finally breaks and you can actually be outside without melting. The park was packed that day with families having picnics, people playing volleyball, dogs running around off-leash in the designated area. It was one of those perfect fall afternoons where everyone in Austin decides to be outside at the same time. I brought a book I'd been trying to finish for weeks and found a nice spot under a big oak tree near the playground. I spread out my blanket, got comfortable, and started reading. I'd been there maybe 30 minutes, completely absorbed in my book, when I noticed someone standing near my blanket. I looked up and saw a little boy, probably about 6 years old, with messy brown hair and a dinosaur t-shirt. He was just standing there staring at me with this really intense look on his face. Not the normal curious stare kids give strangers, but something more focused and serious. The boy stood there for a few more seconds, just staring at me with those serious dark eyes. Then he spoke. "Are you Tessa?" My stomach dropped. How did this child know my name? I I sat up straighter on my blanket and looked around the park, trying to spot parents or anyone who might be with him. There were plenty of people around, families on blankets, kids playing on the playground equipment, but no one seemed to be watching this boy or paying attention to us. "Yes, I'm Tessa," I said carefully, keeping my voice gentle. "Sweetie, where are your mom and dad? Are they here with you?" The boy completely ignored my question. Instead, he held out a piece of paper that had been folded in half. "My friend told me to give you this. He said it's really important that you get it today." I took the paper from his small hand, feeling increasingly uncomfortable with this whole situation. "What friend? Where is he right now?" The boy turned and pointed toward the edge of the park, where there was a line of trees and some trails that led into a more wooded area. "He's over there. He doesn't like coming out where there are lots of people. He says crowds make him nervous. But he knows you. He told me your name and what you look like and everything." Something about the way this child was speaking made my skin crawl. It didn't sound like normal kid talk, didn't have that playful imagination quality. He sounded serious and matter-of-fact, like he was delivering an actual message from an actual person. I was about to ask more questions when the boy leaned closer to me and dropped his voice to a whisper. "He says you'll die soon, in 7 days, but you can stop it if you pay attention to the picture." Before I could even process those words, before I could ask what he meant, the boy turned and ran toward the playground. I watched him weave between families and disappear into a group of kids playing on the swings. I just sat there holding this folded piece of paper, my heart pounding, my hands starting to shake. My rational brain was trying to tell me this was just a weird kid, maybe one who watched too many scary movies or had older siblings who told him creepy stories. But my gut was screaming that something was very wrong about this entire interaction. I unfolded the paper slowly, not sure what to expect. What I saw made my blood turn to ice. It was a child's drawing done in crayon, messy and simple the way 6-year-olds draw, but the content was terrifyingly specific. There was a stick figure woman with curly brown hair just like mine. Next to the woman was a small house, and I recognized it immediately. It was my house. The drawing showed the distinctive blue front door, the large window on the left side, even the small porch with 2 steps. Next to the house was a car, and my stomach twisted when I realized it looked exactly like my silver Honda Civic. The drawing even showed a mark on the back of the car that matched the dent in my rear bumper from when someone hit me in a parking lot 3 months ago. How could anyone know these details? How could a child's drawing be this accurate about my life? But the worst part was in the upper right corner of the page. There was a drawing of a calendar with October 24th circled in thick red crayon. I counted in my head. Today was October 17th. That meant October 24th was exactly 7 days from now. Next to the calendar, the drawing showed orange and red flames, crayon marks that were clearly meant to be fire surrounding the little house. Below all of this, in shaky handwriting that looked like a child had written it, were the words, "Check the red box in the closet. It's broken. Fire will come." I read those words 3 times, my mind trying to make sense of them. What red box? I didn't remember having anything like that. And what did broken mean? The drawing was telling me that in 7 days, there would be a fire at my house, and somehow it was connected to something broken in a red box in my closet. This felt like a threat. This felt like someone was watching me, knew details about my life and my home, and was warning me about something terrible that was going to happen. I jumped to my feet and walked quickly toward the playground, scanning the area for the boy. I found him on the swings, pumping his legs to go. Higher, looking like any normal kid having fun at the park. "Hey, I need to talk to you again," I called out, trying not to sound as panicked as I felt. "What's your name? Where's your mom?" A woman sitting on a bench about 10 feet away looked up from her phone. "Is everything okay?" she asked, standing up and walking toward us. I tried to keep my voice steady and normal. "I'm just trying to make sure this boy is with someone. He gave me something and I wanted to talk to his parents about it." The woman smiled in a friendly way. "That's my son, Jamie. Is he bothering you? Jamie, come here right now." The boy jumped off the swing while it was still moving high. landed perfectly on his feet like kids somehow always do, and ran to his mother. I walked over to where Jamie stood next to his mother, holding the drawing in my hand. "Your son gave me this," I said, trying to sound calm and reasonable even though my heart was racing. "He said his friend told him to give it to me, and he said some things that were a little concerning." Jamie's mother took the drawing from me and looked at it, her expression shifting from friendly curiosity to slight embarrassment. "Jamie, did you draw this?" she asked her son. The boy shook his head firmly. "No, my friend drew it. He's really good at drawing even though his hands are old and shaky. He's older than Grandpa, way older." His mother sighed and looked at me with an apologetic smile. "I'm so sorry. Jamie has had this imaginary friend for a few months now. He talks about him all the time. This old man he says he sees at the park. We've tried explaining that imaginary friends aren't real, but he's very insistent about it. What did he say to you that was concerning?" I hesitated, not wanting to scare her or make this into a bigger thing than it needed to be. "He just said his friend wanted me to have this drawing and that it was important. It's fine, really. Kids have great imaginations." But inside, I was anything but fine. I wanted to ask more questions, wanted to know who had actually drawn this picture with such specific details about my life. But I didn't want to alarm Jamie's mother or turn this into some kind of scene in the middle of the park. I said goodbye and walked back to my blanket, but I couldn't sit still. I packed up my things quickly and left the park, the drawing clutched in my hand. During the drive home, my mind was spinning through possibilities. Was this some kind of sick prank? But how would anyone know about the dent in my car or the exact layout of my house unless they'd been watching me closely? The thought made me nauseous. I pulled into my driveway and sat in my car for a moment, staring at my blue front door and comparing it to the drawing. The resemblance was perfect. Too perfect to be a coincidence or a lucky guess. I went inside and immediately headed to my bedroom closet. I started pulling out clothes, shoes, boxes of old belongings, throwing everything onto my bed as I searched for anything red. I was beginning to think there was nothing when I spotted it on the top shelf, pushed way back behind some winter sweaters I hadn't touched in months. A red metal toolbox. I pulled it down, surprised by how heavy it was, and carried it to my bed. The box was old, the red paint chipped and faded in places. I recognized it immediately once I really looked at it. This had been my grandfather's toolbox, something he'd used for decades. When he died 5 years ago, my grandmother had given it to me along with some of his other belongings. I'd put it in my closet and honestly forgotten about it. I opened the toolbox and found it full of old tools. Screwdrivers with worn wooden handles, pliers, a tape measure, various wrenches, and other items my grandfather had collected over his lifetime. At the bottom of the box, coiled up and taking up most of the space, was a heavy-duty electrical extension cord. I pulled it out and started examining it carefully. The cord was old, the rubber coating stiff and cracked in several places. As I uncoiled it, checking every inch, I found the problem. Near the plug end, the insulation was severely damaged, peeling away and exposing bare copper wire underneath. In one section, the damage was so bad that the metal wires were completely visible. This cord was a serious fire hazard. Using it could easily cause sparks, and if those sparks landed on anything flammable, it would start a fire in seconds. My hands started shaking as a memory came flooding back. About 3 weeks ago, the outlet in my bedroom had stopped working. I'd been meaning to call an electrician, but kept putting it off because I was so busy with work. In the meantime, I'd needed a way to charge my phone and power my bedside lamp. I'd found an extension cord somewhere in my house and ran it from the bathroom outlet under my bedroom door to my nightstand. I looked over at my nightstand now and my heart stopped. The cord plugged in there, the one I'd been using every single night for weeks, was the damaged red toolbox cord. I'd been sleeping every night with this fire hazard running under my door, the exposed wires pressed against the carpet, just waiting for the right conditions to spark and ignite. I unplugged the cord immediately and ran outside to throw it in the trash bin. My whole body was shaking. Someone had known about this. Someone had known I had this red toolbox in my closet, had known the extension cord inside was dangerous, had known I was using it, and had known it could cause a fire. But how? And why warn me through a child at a park with a cryptic drawing? I went back inside and looked at the drawing again, specifically at the date circled in red. October 24th. What was special about that date? I grabbed my phone and checked my calendar and weather app. October 24th was next Saturday, 1 week away. The forecast showed it would be the coldest night of the fall so far, with temperatures dropping into the 30s. I always used my space heater on nights that cold, the little portable one I kept in my bedroom. If I'd plugged that space heater into the damaged extension cord, the increased electrical load would almost certainly cause those exposed wires to spark. With the heater running all night and me asleep, a fire could start and spread before I even woke up. The drawing wasn't a threat. It was a warning. Someone was trying to save my life. I called my brother Dylan immediately, trying to keep my voice steady as I explained everything that had happened. The boy at the park, the drawing with specific details about my house and car, finding the dangerous extension cord in the red toolbox exactly where the drawing said to look. Dylan was skeptical at first, suggesting maybe it was just a strange coincidence, or possibly someone playing an elaborate prank on me. But when I texted him photos of the drawing and the damaged cord with the exposed wires, his tone changed completely. Tessa, this is really creepy. Someone's been watching you closely enough to know what your house looks like and what's in your closet. You need to call the police right now. I knew he was probably right, but what would I even tell them? A child I'd never met gave me a drawing that warned me about a fire hazard in my own home. They'd think I was losing my mind. Instead, I decided to take action to protect myself. That evening, I went to a home improvement store and spent over $300 on security equipment. A video doorbell, 2 outdoor security cameras, motion sensor lights. I spent hours that night installing everything, positioning the cameras to cover my front door, my driveway, and my backyard. If someone had been watching my house, if someone knew this much about my life, I was going to find out who they were. Monday morning, I called an electrician and explained I needed an emergency inspection of my entire house. He came that afternoon and spent 2 hours checking every outlet, every wire, every connection. He found 3 additional problems I hadn't known about. 2 outlets with loose wiring and a junction box in my attic that was improperly installed and could have caused a fire on its own. He told me I'd been incredibly lucky that nothing had sparked yet, that my house was a disaster waiting to happen. The repairs cost nearly $2,000, but it was worth every penny for the peace of mind. Over the next few days, I became obsessed with the mystery. I went back to Zilker Park on Wednesday, and again on Friday, looking for Jamie and his mother, hoping to ask more questions about this imaginary friend who supposedly drew the picture. I walked around the entire park both days, checking the playground, the trails, everywhere. I never saw them. I reviewed my new security camera footage constantly, watching for anyone suspicious near my house. Nothing, just the normal activity of my neighborhood. Mail carrier, delivery drivers, neighbors walking their dogs. No one, lurking or watching. On Thursday afternoon, I got a phone call from my supervisor at work. One of my longtime patients, an 87-year-old man named Walter Chen, had passed away peacefully that morning. Walter had been one of my favorite patients over the years. He was kind and mentally sharp despite his failing body, always telling fascinating stories about his life. I'd been visiting him 3 times a week for the past 2 months, managing his pain and keeping him comfortable as cancer slowly took his life. I felt sad hearing he'd passed, but also grateful it had been peaceful and he hadn't suffered at the end. That evening, Walter's daughter called me. Her voice was warm but emotional. "Tessa, my father spoke about you constantly in his final weeks. He said you made his last days bearable. He wanted you to have something. He was very insistent about it, almost obsessive in his final days. Can you come by the house tomorrow to pick it up?" I agreed, curious about what Walter could have left for me. Friday morning, I drove to Walter's house, where I'd visited him so many times over the past months. His daughter met me at the door holding a small cardboard box. "Dad made me promise to give you this after he passed," she said, handing it to me. "He said to tell you he's sorry he couldn't deliver the message himself and that you'd understand everything when the time was right. Inside the box was a leather-bound journal and a handwritten note on top. I recognized Walter's shaky handwriting immediately. The note said, "Tessa, I've been gone 3 days by the time you read this. I tried to tell you in person, but my body failed faster than I expected. Read the journal. It explains everything. The warning at the park came from me. I couldn't let you die the same way he did. You saved me from suffering. Now accept this gift in return. Your life, saved by someone who lost his to the same danger." The old man Jamie spoke about was real. His name was Robert Finley. He died in your house in 1987. Check the records. He's been trying to warn you for weeks, but the living can't usually hear the dead. I could hear him because I was dying, standing between both worlds. Everything in that drawing was true. Trust it. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the paper. Walter had orchestrated the warning at the park, but the explanation made no logical sense. A ghost? A man who died in my house decades ago. I sat in my car outside Walter's house and opened his journal with trembling hands. The entries from his final weeks detailed conversations with someone he called Robert Finley. Walter described how, about a month before his death, he started seeing an elderly man in his room who no one else could see. At first, Walter thought the morphine was causing hallucinations, but this man knew things, specific things about the past, that Walter later verified through research. Robert told Walter he'd died in 1987 in a house fire caused by faulty electrical wiring. He'd lived alone, a retired teacher with no family, and he'd died a preventable death that haunted him. Robert said he'd been trapped in that house for decades, watching new families move in and out, unable to communicate or warn anyone. Then Walter, dying just a few blocks away, became a bridge between worlds, someone who could finally hear him and act. Robert had shown Walter details about my house, about the dangerous extension cord, about the coming cold snap on October 24th when I'd use my space heater. He'd begged Walter to warn me. Walter, in his final days, barely able to leave his bed, had asked his great-grandson Jamie to deliver the message at the park where Robert said I'd be that Saturday. The drawing had been guided by Robert's spirit working through a child's hand, capturing details only someone who'd been watching could know. I drove straight home and did what any skeptical person would do. I searched property records online. It took me an hour of digging through county records and old newspaper archives, but I found it. Robert Finley, age 72, had died on October 24th, 1987, in a house fire at my exact address. The fire had been caused by faulty electrical wiring in the bedroom. The house had been so badly damaged, it was rebuilt before being sold again. I sat staring at my computer screen, my entire understanding of reality shifting. The date circled in the drawing, October 24th, wasn't just the predicted cold snap. It was the anniversary of Robert's death. He died 36 years ago on the same date, in the same house, from the same kind of electrical fire he'd tried to prevent me from experiencing. If I hadn't gotten that warning, if I hadn't found and removed that damaged cord, I would have died exactly the same way on the exact same date. The next day was Saturday, October 24th. The temperature in Austin dropped to 35 degrees just as forecasted, the coldest night of the fall. My bedroom was freezing. I reached for my space heater out of habit, then stopped. My hands went cold as I realized what would have happened. If that damaged extension cord was still plugged in, if I'd connected my space heater to it, the electrical load would have caused those exposed wires to spark against the carpet. I would have gone to sleep with a fire starting under my bedroom door, smoke filling my room while I was unconscious. I would have died just like Robert Finley, 36 years to the day in the same bedroom. Instead, I was alive, sitting in my cold room, crying for a man I'd never met who'd spent decades trying to save someone from his fate, and for a patient who'd used his dying breath to deliver an impossible warning. Sunday morning, I drove to the cemetery and found Robert Finley's grave. It was a simple headstone with just his name and dates, 1915-1987. No family members buried nearby, no flowers, nothing to indicate anyone remembered him. I placed fresh flowers on his grave and spoke out loud, feeling strange but compelled. Robert, if you can hear me, thank you. I don't understand how any of this works, but you saved my life. I hope you can finally rest now. I also visited Walter's grave and thanked him for his courage in delivering a message that must have seemed insane. The electrician's inspection had revealed that my house had multiple dangerous electrical problems, any of which could have caused a fire. I had everything fixed, spent nearly $2,000, but it was worth it. I was alive to spend that money because two men, one living and one dead, had found a way to warn me. My brother Dylan still doesn't believe the supernatural parts of the story. He thinks Walter noticed the electrical problems during one of my visits and used his grandson to warn me in a dramatic way. I don't argue with him. I understand skepticism because I was a skeptic too. But I've read Walter's journal, researched Robert's death, held a drawing that contained details a child couldn't possibly know. I've learned that some things can't be explained with logic, and that's okay. As a hospice nurse, my relationship with death changed completely after this experience. I'd always seen death as an ending, a biological process. Now I understand it might be more complex than I believed. I don't know if Robert Finley has moved on, or if he's still in my house. I haven't experienced anything unusual since that October, no strange occurrences or feelings of being watched. I like to think he finally found peace after saving me from his fate. I started volunteering with a fire safety organization, teaching people about electrical hazards and the importance of home inspections. I show them photos of the damaged extension cord that nearly killed me and explain how easy it is to overlook dangers hiding in closets and storage boxes. I tell a version of my story that leaves out the supernatural elements but emphasizes how a warning from an unexpected source saved my life. My presentations are effective because my gratitude is genuine. I was given the gift of continued life, and I want to help others avoid the fate I narrowly escaped. Every October 24th, I bring fresh flowers to Robert Finley's grave. I update him on my life, tell him about patients I've helped, about my brother's growing family, about the fire safety work I'm doing in his memory. I hope he can hear me. I hope he knows his 36 years of waiting mattered, that his determination to protect a stranger from suffering was the purest form of love. Here's what I learned from the child's warning at the park. Help can come from the most unexpected sources, and we should never be too proud or too skeptical to accept it. I'd spent my career helping people through death, but never considered that the relationship between living and dead might be more complex than I believed. Whether you believe in ghosts or spirits doesn't matter as much as being open to warnings when they come, even impossible ones. My logical mind wanted to dismiss that drawing as a prank or coincidence. If I'd listened only to logic and ignored my instincts, I'd be dead. Instead, I investigated. I acted. I accepted help from a source that made no rational sense. That choice saved my life. I think about how many people might receive warnings they dismiss because they seem too strange or impossible. How many tragedies happen because we're too rational to believe in things we can't explain. I'm not saying you should believe every weird thing that happens, but I am saying stay open, pay attention. When something tells you to check your house for danger, check it. When a child hands you a drawing with specific warnings, investigate it. When your instincts scream that something is wrong, listen. If this story made you think about the mysteries we can't fully explain, hit that subscribe button and leave a comment sharing your thoughts. I'd love to hear from you. But more importantly, check your home for electrical hazards today. Look in your closets, behind furniture, in storage boxes. Make sure your extension cords aren't damaged, your outlets aren't loose, your wiring is safe. These simple checks can prevent tragedies. I was saved by an impossible warning delivered through a child at a park and orchestrated by a dying patient and a ghost. Most people won't get that kind of supernatural intervention. You have to save yourself by paying attention and taking basic safety seriously. Replace old extension cords, hire electricians to inspect older homes, install smoke detectors, and check their batteries regularly. These boring, practical steps are how most of us stay alive. not through ghostly warnings, but through simple vigilance. And maybe, just maybe, stay open to the possibility that we don't understand everything about how this world works, about what happens after death, about the ways the living and dead might still be connected. Thank you for watching. And remember, sometimes the most important messages come from the most unexpected messengers, whether that's a child at a park, a dying patient's final words, or a feeling you can't quite explain that tells you to check one more time before you go to sleep.